Welcome back to episode 2 of the Second Amendment Liberal Podcast. Today's episode will be the first part in a 2-part series dedicated to the concept of ignorance and ego, specifically regarding that of anti-gunners, though we will explore this concept as it applies to politics in general. I must admit, I first approached the creation of this episode as more of a therapeutic exercise for myself than anything else. The deeper I delved into the matter, it developed into a curiosity and fascination of human behavior that I've far too often observed when engaging in debate. For years, I've been left flabbergasted and awestruck by the sheer audacity of a large portion of anti-gun people who seem to be able to reconcile their extreme ignorance of firearms with their strong and adamant position against them. How is it possible for someone to have an opinion of something they know less than nothing about? How big of an ego or elevated sense of superiority must one have to take to the streets and protest a matter of which not even basic information is possessed? I'm not a perfect human by any stretch, but I can't imagine any scenario where I'd break out the picket signs and march on a Capitol without some semblance of familiarity of the matter that I take issue. Rags like the Huffington Post, Salon, Breitbart, CNN, Fox News, etc. are not reliable or credible sources of which to base your opinion. Yet, many people do just that. Are these people mentally deficient, or are they emotionally immature and unable to accept the possibility their gut feelings about the world may be incorrect? I used to think these people were being duped and manipulated by the anti-gun lobby and politicians like Dianne Feinstein, which is true in most cases. I felt factual information was being withheld from them, and exposure would cure their fear and anger regarding gun ownership. The age of social media has proven this to be largely incorrect. With the rise of the term gunsplaining entering the anti-gunner lexicon, it has been made very clear to me that some people simply don't care to know the truth, or don't want to, out of fear of being wrong. If you've been paying attention to the current political climate in any capacity, you'll see that this behavior extends far beyond the gun conversation. With that said, today Matt of the YouTube channel NeverEnuffAmmo will be joining me today. I want everyone to approach this with an open mind. This will not be a debate. This is more of a conversation. You're going to be hearing things you agree with, and you're going to be hearing some things you disagree with. All right, enjoy the show. What is the purpose of the Second Amendment?
The purpose of the Second Amendment?
Yes.
I mean, it depends on who you ask, right? But yeah. Ultimately, if you go back to the time that this was being written and the purposes it was written for, the purpose of the Second Amendment was kind of like it's kind of the same reason that all the countries now have nukes, right? The idea was make sure that the population had just as many arms and access to arms, which is the term they use, so that it would go on to describe anything, any type of arm, which changes throughout history. Right now, and for the last 200-300 years, it's been guns. Before that, it was bows and arrows and crossbows and swords and so on, and spears, and before that, and everything else. Right. The idea was that the citizenry would be as armed as the government, so as to prevent anything like what they had literally just experienced with Britain not happening again. They wanted to ensure, and again, it was kind of a mutually assured destruction, right? It's the nuclear option, right? It's like, we have a bunch of guns, you have a bunch of guns, and the idea was, well, hopefully, if the government always knows that the people have a bunch of guns and they have arms equal to what the government has, the government won't ever try anything, and therefore the arms will never need to be used. It was kind of, it's kind of the idea, as a parent for me, I spanked my kids once in the blue moon, and because I did it once, they know I'll do it again, so it kind of keeps them in line. Right, it's kind of the same thing. It's you have them so you don't have to use them. That's the idea. We are supposed to have that as this barrier, as this safety net, so that the government doesn't ever try to become tyrannical and go against us and do what Britain did to us at that time.
So what is your response to people that say that it's not relevant anymore?
Well, that's say they don't understand the concept. Well, honestly, I'd say they're completely either willfully so or not willfully so. They're ignorant, because most of the people that say that are also the same ones that talk about how police are going around killing everybody, or that Donald Trump's literally, Hitler, or whatever it is. You can usually find some streak of anti-government, anti-law enforcement, authoritarian, whatever, in these same people who are saying that only the government should have guns. It's absolutely a ridiculous concept. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. We've seen time and time again how things tend to go once a population is disarmed. In every single instance that it has happened in the world throughout history, it has eventually led to some sort of tyrannical, authoritarian regime. We saw it happen. I mean, you can go back as far as you want, but we saw it happen. A great, example of it is during Nazi Germany.
Yes.
Where they came in and they disarmed all the Jewish people first. I mean, gun control in our own country started off from a point of racism. It started off from a point of they didn't want black people to have guns.
Absolutely.
And it started in the South. And, they knew there was all these people that are free now. And, here we go. We got to make sure that they can't come back to get us now because, we don't, whatever. And it's really, every situation, it has been tyrannical in one way or another in the sense to bring people down, to control them. And that's ultimately, gun control is not about guns. It's about control. Absolutely. And I know a lot of gun people say that all the time.
Absolutely. It's true. It's absolutely true. So, where do you fall on the political spectrum? How would you describe yourself and your views?
I am, there was a time when I would have said, I'm middle of the road moderate or something like that. You can't say that anymore because that just means you're probably left wing or something like that. But I would describe myself as libertarian, small L, not a part of the Libertarian Party, but a small L libertarian or classical liberal, whatever you want to say, who's very constitutional, and believes in conservatism, not Republican conservatism. Okay, because Republicans, I don't like the political parties. I think they're all corrupt in their own ways. I think obviously some are worse than others. I think the Democrats are worse than the Republicans, but still, I'm not a big fan of the Republicans either. But I believe in conservatism as its original meaning, in that, I believe in a smaller government that controls less of our lives, that controls less of what we are allowed to do, that has less control over us. That's, true originalism, conservatism, and that's what I believe in. I don't believe in the Republican version of conservatism, because that's all crony capitalism and we just want to be the ones to tell you what to do, not the other side. So
I'm with you there. I'm with you there. Yes, absolutely. I agree with that 100%. Now, we do definitely agree, because I do describe myself as a liberal. I'm closer to classical liberal, but I believe that your beliefs on abortion and mine differ a little, but that doesn't really matter, because I think we're closer in thought than we are different. And I think that's what's very important here.
Well, I think that goes for most people that get out of the radicalized right or left. Once they step away from these people that are honestly just, it's like, again, on the right or the left, regardless of which one you think is worse, there's all these boxes you have to check off, and they make you feel like, okay, you have to check off all these boxes, otherwise you can't be a part of us, and they use those boxes to divide us and split us up into voting blocks, and that's one of those areas where I think most of us, if we get away from that, we probably agree on over 90% of just things and what's going on in the world and what's going on in the country. But we let the political parties, we let the people that are pushing agendas and trying to, get votes and get into positions of power, which then, of course, when they get into positions of power, they never actually do what they just continue to try and gain control and retain power and help their friends out and do that kind of crap and whatever else. But, if we all just kind of stepped away and went more towards the middle and just actually started, conversing with each other and having, actually taking the time to listen to each other, then we go, there's these 10 things that are important to us. And, it turns out 8 or 9 of them we actually agree on. Maybe there's 1 or 2 we don't, but that puts us more in the category of friends who can disagree and starts moving us away from enemies. Everybody's an enemy now.
Absolutely.
Everybody's right and left. We got to be enemy. We got to hate each other,
Yes. Yes.
And it's so stupid.
It's really very dumb. It's very dumb. And I've been watching your channel for several years now. And one thing I've always noticed about your approach is that, number one, you're willing to listen. Number two, you're willing to actually have a conversation. You're not just out there spouting out talking points. You have your own thoughts and opinions, and you tolerate other people's opinions. And I really like that about your show.
Yeah, well, I mean, I try. I enjoy having people with differing opinions on and talking about them. I think if you sit there and talk to the people that only agree with you, just in this echo chamber, that you never accomplish anything. And sure, sometimes it feels good to, shout to other people who agree with you or have conversations with people who agree with you. We do that all the time. There's not, it's natural. But if you do that all the time, if you never step out and talk to somebody else who may disagree with you on a certain issue, even if that conversation turns into an argument, arguing's okay.
Yep.
I argue with family and friends all the time, but you
have with Yankee, perfect example.
I argue with Yankee every time I talk to him. So, we don't agree on a whole lot of stuff. I still consider him a friend. But yeah, you have to do that stuff. We have to learn how to have conversations. I think we've and obviously it's up and down throughout history, but we've hit this point now in this country where it's insane. It's insane. There are people and they are literally riots in the streets, setting fires, destroying property, taking over. Police aren't stopping them. Like this stuff up in Oregon with Antifa. I mean, it's insane. Yes. Can you imagine what would happen if the Tea Party had done this?
I was just talking about this the other day. I can't even think of one conservative protest.
Lost their minds.
They have.
Would have gone insane. They were already calling them a bunch of racist terrorists. Yes. Oh, these homegrown terrorist organizations. It's these racist Tea Partiers that are going to destroy this country. No, it's your side, and there's proof of it.
I want to know why the government treats them with such kid gloves. I don't understand that.
Yeah, I don't know. And of course the media is they just, when I heard, what was the thing that was running big news last week was on one of the shows, I don't remember, it was on CNN, MSNBC, whatever. And one of the guests actually called the people who went into that restaurant and ran out, Ted Cruz and his wife from the restaurant. And referring to them and referring to Antifa when they're out there doing these riots and stuff, and called them a mob. And the host got all offended. Oh, we're going to use the M word now? Wait, mob is an M word? Excuse me? They were literally being a mob of people in both occasions, one where they're rioting, one where they go into a restaurant and sit there and yell and scream in people's faces until they have to leave. Yeah, that's a mob.
Yeah, that's not acceptable behavior. That's not acceptable behavior.
No, it's not. The right never did it. I'm not saying the right has been right in everything. Mm-hmm. And there's some of them that have been that, and again, this is one of the reasons. I mean, I play more towards the middle. There's nut jobs on the right too.
Absolutely, but, like the Bundys, that situation, yeah, like that.
Yeah, I mean, I I've never, but you don't see like this, and even with the Bundy thing, I mean, there was some issues there. And I think when you really look at it, both sides made some grave mistakes. But
they did.
They stayed put and said, we're not doing this. They didn't get up and go into the middle of the street and start destroying public and private property and lighting fires and taking over. And they didn't do that. Doesn't mean what they did was right or wrong or whatever, depending on how you feel about it. But even then, they don't. The left seems to be so just vitriolic at this point.
I agree. I took issue with the second Bundy situation at that wildlife refuge situation.
Yes, that one pissed me off. The first Bundy one, I was like, I
could feel him. I could feel him a little bit on that one.
I had friends that actually were there that went there with their guns to help protect the land. And like I said, that was a different situation. I'm not saying I was for it or anything, but at the same time, there was some stuff going on with the BLM and the government that they were getting screwed over, and there were some issues there. Maybe
there was a part of me that was sympathetic.
Yes, the thing that happened up in Washington or wherever it was, that was there. They drug kids up there, man. Yes. They drug kids up there. What kind of people put themselves, much less their kids, in a situation like that? Exactly. It was completely irresponsible. It was completely stupid. It was unnecessary. It was just completely unnecessary, and I completely disagree with that one, 100%.
Oh yeah, but you're right though. I mean, most of the time, if there's a riot, people lighting stuff on fire, it's people on the left, extreme left, but they're on the left nonetheless, and I don't understand that behavior at all.
It was funny because at the Tea Party, I think the worst thing anybody ever said about anybody at Tea Party is, I saw somebody holding up a racist sign. Okay. Show me. Well, it was there. Okay. Well, when you see it again, see if you can take a picture of it. Oh, I will. Okay. I mean, that was it. And I'm not a Tea Party or anything like that. You know what I mean? I mean, I like the stuff they were saying, but I never joined the Tea Party or anything like that. You know, I like they were very constitutional, which I am as well.
And I am too. Yeah.
I think when you look at the document, it's good for everybody. I just still don't understand why the left doesn't understand this. I mean, I don't understand why your average Democrat, left-leaning voter doesn't look at it and go, oh, this actually benefits me if I would pay attention to it. You know, they treat it like it's only a constitution for people on the right or conservatives or Republicans. I
agree with this so much. I don't understand their aversion to following the Constitution. There's nothing inherently wrong with it. Could there be a potentially better version of the Constitution? Perhaps.
Sure,
the way it is now is fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, the way it is now is better than anybody else has done it.
Absolutely.
In the history of the world. So, I mean, let's stop fighting it. You know, if you want to talk about making improvements, they actually, I don't know if the people on the left know this, they put a process in there to amend the Constitution if we find things that we want to make sure we take care of. You know,
I say this all the time.
I mean, it really again, the way you said what you said, the aversion to the Constitution is absolutely ridiculous as far as I'm concerned. It makes no sense. And I've had this conversation with so many people on the left. I'm like, you do understand that it protects your freedom and liberty too. It's not just a Republican Constitution. I don't know why. And they'll always go off. Oh, it was only put in place to protect old white men. Well, no, it wasn't. I mean, yeah, that's who wrote it, but I mean, it doesn't say old white men on it. It says, you know, all people. It's for everybody in the country.
And what most people don't know is that most of the founding fathers were actually against slavery. They actually put off. Yeah, they put off getting rid of slavery because they knew it would start a civil war right away.
Yeah, which is, I mean, you know, it's unfortunate that it took as long as it did.
Yes,
and I'm not going to sit there. I mean, there were some that were pro-slavery.
Yes, there were.
You know, but there were many of them that were abolitionists, and there's a lot of things that happened at that time that were because they were abolitionists. There's a lot of things that were put into motion during that period of time that was that came from those individuals that helped create the country and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and the fact that they were abolitionists.
Yes, absolutely.
But you know, I mean, it's and again, it's why do we care about what a bunch of old racist white men wrote down 200 and whatever years ago? Well, because I mean, again, this is what the left does: is they find something, I think, and maybe the right does it too. I don't know. I notice it more when the left does it. They find that one thing to make everything bad, right?
Yes.
One thing. Okay, well, if Benjamin Franklin had slaves, therefore the Constitution should be null and void, and we should be a socialist nation. I'm like, wait. How did you get from A to Z without you skipped all the letters in between?
That's right. I don't care where a good idea comes from. If it's a good idea, it's a good idea.
Yeah. And like that's the line of thought. I mean, unless, of course, you're talking about Margaret Sanger and Planned Parenthood, and then they're like, oh, it's just that we completely different organization. Never mind that it was founded to eradicate black people, but no, we don't care. You know, I can still. What did Hillary Clinton say? Well, I can still admire something that somebody does, even if they weren't a good person. When she was asked specifically about Margaret Sanger. And I'm like, oh, yeah. What about Ben Franklin? What are you going to say then, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I feel you on that one. Like I said, I'm not in agreement with you on abortion, but there is some hypocrisy there, you know. There's some things that aren't being addressed by the left.
Yeah.
You know, I get you on that one.
And even on the abortion thing, and I don't know, we may have talked about this on the even if it was one of those things, when you have one side that is so vehemently pro-baby killing, right? The way I see it, obviously, my point of view. That they're not even willing to have a conversation of, hey, you know, maybe can we go by what science says and back up the time period that you can have an abortion to when we know with most certainty that the baby's not going to feel anything and you're not killing an actual baby. Can we just back up by a couple or whatever it is, you know, back up to when the scientists are telling us that it doesn't have a nervous system yet, that should still be more than enough time to decide what you want to do. I mean, if the left was at least willing to start having some conversations, people on the right wouldn't be so angry, because again, and I'm reminded of the Louis C.K. joke, right? I don't know if you've heard this, where he does this little 5-minute skit or whatever on abortion, and he's talking about it. And I know we're not supposed to reference Louis C.K. now because he got it. He whipped his dick out. I don't know what he did, but now he's on the banned list. But he does a little thing. He's like, people get so upset about these people who are pro-life, how they get so upset about abortion. He's like, but whether you believe in it or not, you got to understand, these people think you're killing babies.
I've heard that, yes.
Maybe they should be upset. You got to imagine that. They think you're killing babies. Of course they're going to be upset. And so when you have one side that feels that way, and you got the other side that just is like, no, we need to push it. We need more time. Let's go up to 6 months. You can have an abortion. Let's go to, full-term abortion or, whatever. And this is some of the stuff that they're arguing for. And you're like, no, because we scientifically know there's a point, right, at which a baby has a nervous system and fingers and toes and that kind of thing, and it's like, okay, at that point you're kind of killing a baby. Okay,
I'm sympathetic to that argument.
I mean, it's like if you want to argue with me that we should say, okay, when you're pregnant, you've got 6 to 8 weeks to make that decision. When it's still small, when the nervous system isn't developed, when it's not going to feel pain, when it is less, I guess, of a baby, then you can start to have those conversations. But they don't want to even have those conversations.
And I agree with you. They should be having those conversations. I agree with you. And I see a lot of evasion of even answering the questions. You know what I mean? I see it. I definitely see it. And my opposition to you is not out of any sense of morality. It's just that I don't see any. I can't oppose it based on practicality. Until we have a system that can take care of unwanted babies, I don't see what you realistically can do about the situation. And what are you going to do if a woman voices her desire to get an abortion? Strap her down until she gives birth? I mean, I don't understand how that's going to work out either. But
and they'll say they're saying again, it's like the gun control argument, right? You can't stop everything, right? Like that's the point. You can't stop everything. And so, again, like with we should ban assault weapons. Well, it's not going to stop anything. Yes. I mean, Columbine happened during the assault weapons ban back in the late 90s. Okay. It's not going to stop anything. And again, this is where it comes to having those conversations. Like somebody like me would look at those situations and go, well, yeah, but even if you started with because, one of the big things is, okay, what about the people who are going to die in back alley abortions? Okay. Well, they did studies on that because that whole thing was way overblown. And the guy, I forget his name, the guy who, was it NARAL, who ran NARAL for a long time, admitted that when they originally stated that, I think it was 3,500 something women a year died from back alley abortions. This was in 1973. Mm-hmm. And that's when they were doing the whole Roe v. Wade and all this stuff was going on. And that's one of the reasons why we need legalized abortion. The CDC that year did a study how many people actually died that year from quote unquote back alley abortions. It was 38. It wasn't over 3,000. It was 38. And so my argument's always been, well, yeah, those things are going to happen. But even if you made abortion illegal, we would still have millions of more babies born every year. Like, those illegal ones are still going to happen. Yeah. But it's not like those outweigh the dead kids that are. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, what was it for the last 4 or 5 years in a row in New York? In the black community, there have been more black babies aborted than actually born in New York.
I have heard that. Yes, I have. Yeah, I've heard that.
And I thought that was a lie the first time I heard it. And then you do the research, and it's true. I'm like, that's horrible. For me, for somebody like me, that's horrible.
Oh, yeah. And I'm sympathetic. Like, I see that people that share your view, you feel like you're doing the right thing. You're not trying to hurt anybody. Yeah, and people say, well, it's about a woman's choice. Well, I don't, you know what I mean? I don't want to tell her what to do, but at a certain point, that's not her body. Like, at a certain point, that becomes something else. It's got different. I hear you. I'm sympathetic. I'm telling you, I'm sympathetic to that argument because at some point, it is an individual living thing.
Yeah, and if we wanted to have actual common sense I say common sense. I hate that word all the time, but it's true. If we want to have common sense conversations about, okay, well, let's sit down. Let's talk to actual scientists. Let's talk to doctors. Let's find out from them to the best of their ability, because medical technology grows year by year by year. You know, it's things that we can do today where we can keep a baby alive that was, you know, an early term pregnancy that, you know, was born at 5 months. You know, 20, 30 years ago, we couldn't keep that baby alive. Today we can. Yeah. So, you know, we've gotten to the point to where we know earlier and earlier and earlier when the nervous system develops inside the infant. So if people wanted to get down and have a conversation, go, okay, look, if you know you're pregnant, let's talk to these people and find out at what point does it make sense to say, okay, this is too far, you know? Mm-hmm. But they don't want to have those conversations. They talk about people being science deniers, but they don't want to. They don't want to at least have a conversation. It's not like somebody saying we should outlaw abortion. Some people are just saying, hey, let's maybe listen to some of the scientists and what the doctors are saying and like push it back a little bit. Yeah, sure. Maybe that cuts into your time frame of having to decide. And I know it's a big decision, but you're also talking about another human life. So maybe you should, you know, be a little bit quicker on deciding what you want to do.
And that doesn't sound unreasonable to me.
And those are the types of conversations that people want to have, but the other side doesn't listen. So what happens is when they don't listen, then of course the pro-life, they just go nuts and they start baby killer and all this stuff. And they go, fine, we don't want abortions at all. Do away with Roe v. Wade. Because they're going up against an extreme ideology that in general doesn't want to have a conversation with them. So then they go, okay, fine. We don't want to have a conversation either.
Yes.
We just want no abortions whatsoever.
You just described the state of politics in America in general.
Yeah, it is. That's exactly what it is. And that's why if we stopped getting so radicalized by the right and the left and just came together, we would find out, again, that the whole, 8, 9 times out of 10, we agree on stuff.
Absolutely.
And on those 1 or 2 things that we don't agree on, we can probably find a way to make everybody happy. We can probably find a way to make things work. But instead, we spend all our time against the two sides just yelling at each other.
Absolutely. So, and I can hear it now already. Because I'm not challenging you enough on the abortion issue or anything else that you're kind of approaching from a conservative perspective, people are going to try to call me out and say that I let you slide or I let you keep talking bullshit. But this is not what this format is about. It's about me listening to what you have to say.
Well, I mean, if you want to challenge me, that's fine. I don't care. I like that conversation. That doesn't bother me.
Yeah. I'll challenge you if I see the need to.
Man. I've had so many arguments, yelled with so many people, but yeah.
But yeah, let's steer this back onto guns.
Okay.
So where are you from and how did you get into guns?
Well, I'm from Dallas, Texas. I live in Brownsville, Texas now, which is down by South Padre Island. So pretty much I live as far south Texas as you can go without either hitting the Gulf or Mexico.
Oh, really?
So I'm probably share a similar, how I like to refer to it as swamp ass climate that you probably reside in down there in Florida.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so I'm born and raised in Texas. I did live in Colorado for a little while when I was 19, just because I wanted to get out of Texas and have some fun for a while.
Nothing wrong with
but
that.
Other than that, lived in Texas my whole life. As far as getting into guns, it was weird. I mean, I grew up with a single mom, and her and my dad were divorced before I could know what was going on. I was like 3 when their divorce was finalized, but and she was very first of all, she's very apolitical and always has been. She's been much more into her religion than politics, and she always believed that if you're going to be a good Christian, you listen to the Bible, and the Bible says, hey, don't concern yourself with the politics of man. So she intentionally stays out of politics. Mm-hmm. But being who she was a teenager in the 60s. She's a very hippy-dippy, loves animals, kind of. If she had been political, she'd have been a Democrat, hands down. Right. No question about it. That being said, I grew up in Texas. Everybody I knew had guns. My mother, while she's never owned a gun, has never been uncomfortable around guns. She's always told me, she's like, you know what, I don't like guns, but I trust you with guns, so whatever.
Reasonable, very reasonable.
Yeah, and so that was kind of how I was raised. So, getting into guns, it was more influenced by my friends and their dads or whatever. I'd go up. My friend's dad had a hunting lease, and we'd go out and shoot pigs and stuff and that kind of thing. So I started getting into it when I was a younger teenager, around 12, 13, 14. We'd start going out there and doing stuff. And then, moved out of the house. I think I had a shotgun. I forget when I got that, but got a double barrel shotgun when I was younger. And then first handgun was in 1911. I picked that up after I moved out of the house when I was 18.
Fine taste there.
Yeah. And then for a while there, then I got married way too young and didn't really pay attention to guns. I had one little revolver that I kept, but didn't really, just wasn't, it wasn't a hobby like it is for me now. It wasn't something I was very, very passionate about. I also wasn't very political early on. Mm-hmm. I had a lot, there's a lot of things that I think now that I still thought back then, but I didn't understand how it was tied to politics or the Constitution or anything like that. Right. I would vote for president, when I was 18, but that's it. Like I didn't care about anything else. So I hadn't been very, very political, and guns weren't really that big a deal. I understood the importance of guns for hunting. I understood the importance of guns, having a gun for self-defense, but it was not a hobby. I didn't collect guns like I do now. It wasn't a big, big passion. It was just something that, as somebody in Texas, I saw as just something that you do. It's just a part of life. It's a necessity. You have a gun around in case you need it. And like I said, I had a little 38 special revolver throughout my 20s. And then that was it. And then I got a divorce and moved down here to South Texas. And, when I was about 25, and I don't know, I started hanging around more people who had more guns, and it just started to become, just more natural to buy another gun. I'll buy a rifle. I'll buy a shotgun here and there. And the collection just started growing when I got in my late 20s. And then obviously, I'm 41 now. So, and they come and go, I buy guns, I sell guns, I buy guns, I sell guns, I trade guns, whatever interests me at the time. But, also again, my late 20s, when I started getting more political, started paying attention to more what the politicians said. And that's what, and first, when I started paying attention to everything, and because of Texas and how I was raised and all that kind of stuff, I thought, well, I think I'm a Republican. And then that lasted for, 2-3 years. And I was like, I don't know about this. These guys are kind of like, and by this time, we've got the Patriot Act, and we've got Cheney, and we've got a lot of this stuff. I'm like, oh God. But I never, I do for a fact, I never associated with or felt in line with Democrats. That's for sure. A lot because of the gun thing. And the more social, welfare, that kind of thing. That was also something I never really got into. And it wasn't from a perspective of not giving a crap about anybody. It was always perspective of, I just always felt like, even when I was younger, didn't really get very political. I just thought, I think free market capitalism works better than anything else. I feel like it's, if somebody doesn't like something, they don't do it. Now, crony capitalism, which is what we have now, is crappy. Yes, I don't like it when crony capitalism gets involved with politics, and then we have bad things that happen. When you have a true free market that is beholden to us, the consumer, things work much better. So we need to figure out a way to get back to that. But as far as the gun thing, like I said, I started to get more political. I started to get more guns. I started to pay attention to what politicians were saying, what they were doing. I started to pay attention to things like the Constitution, which, I was in school. We all knew it. We all read it. We all studied it.
Yep.
But I never really paid attention to it. And so I started, doing more reading and more research in my spare time, and started, trying to understand more about, why is the Second Amendment so important? Why are guns so important outside of me just growing up with them and understanding, hey, hunting, hey, have a gun for self-defense. And then obviously at that point, I was starting to get into just like collecting them from a recreational standpoint. Mm-hmm. I wanted to understand why the Second Amendment was so important. And it was honestly very easy, because it's a very simple thing to understand when you know the context, like we talked about at the beginning. When you know the context of when it was written, and understand what they were doing at that time. So you look at some of the other writings in the Federalist Papers, you look at some of the other writings for people like Ben Franklin and John Adams and some of these others, and George Washington, and the kinds of things they were saying when it came to guns, when it came to defending the country, when it came to tyranny, when it came to all these things. And when you really start to do that research, you understand why guns are important. And at that point, it became much different for me. It wasn't just about that I had a gun for self-defense. It wasn't just about that I had a gun for hunting. It wasn't just about that I had guns that I like to take to the range. It became something more important. It felt like more of a responsibility. Like I need to own guns. I need to raise my family to understand how important this is, because this is a part of preserving liberty and freedom. And the hope is that we never, ever have to use them.
Absolutely.
That's the thing. The fact that we have them is supposed to prevent the government from doing a lot of the stuff that they're honestly doing today, but it's supposed to prevent them from doing that. So hopefully,
what is your response then to people who say, "Oh, we got Patriot Act and this and that, yada yada yada"? Where were you and your guns? Where's this uprising supposed to be?
Oh well, I mean, I guess it depends on what. And that is a tricky question. It really is, because and I know some people are like, well, they've gone too far already. We should get organized. And I'm like, okay, now hang on. By and large, I mean, we still have a lot of freedom. I was one of those people that was against the Patriot Act after I understood it. I didn't understand it at first when they first passed it. I don't think, especially because in my age range, I was 24 or whatever, in 2002, I think, 23, 24, I don't remember.
Oh, wow. That seems so long ago, man.
2002. Yeah. So it was my 20s. But, it was a long time ago. And so I don't really remember what, I don't remember what I thought about it at the time. But I certainly didn't understand it. And then as time went on, and again, within the next couple of years after that, I was moving down here. I was getting more into politics and stuff like that. And I started to understand it more. And I was like, oh, God, this is horrible. This is horrible.
Yes.
I think the biggest issue with, well, why aren't we taking up arms right now? I think because we haven't hit the point to where we haven't hit that point of no return. We haven't hit that point where it can't be salvaged if we make the right decisions now. If we vote the right people into place, if we put pressure on our politicians like we should, I don't think we've hit a point where they were with Britain, where it was a point of no return. It was a point of we can't live like this. We have no freedom and liberty. We have no control over our own destiny. We have a king that tells us what to do, period. We don't vote for anybody. We have no control over our government and over our lives. We are completely at the behest of the king. We are cogs in a wheel that provides him more power and more money, and that's it. And that's all they were at that particular time. We're not there yet. And you got to understand, they went through a lot before they made that decision. They didn't want to make that decision. They didn't want to put themselves in that position to have to start a revolution. We don't want to do that. And we haven't hit that point of no return yet. And so I think that's the biggest difference between then and now. Yeah, there's a lot of bad things going on. But the fact that you can still vote for your own politician, which is something they didn't have at the time, the fact that we can vote for our president, we're not just assigned a king, or a queen, right? The fact that we can do these things. And yeah, there's some crappy rules and crappy laws, and there's things that we would like to change. We still have the ability to change those things if we as people get on board. Right. The problem is most people just sit at home and don't get involved.
Yes, it's on us. That's what a lot of people don't understand. It's on us to make changes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, it's our responsibility. So let's shift away a little bit from politics, and let's talk about your YouTube career here for a second.
Is it?
When and why did you decide to start a YouTube channel?
I decided to start a YouTube channel. This was back in 2010, and I was working for a company and got laid off in 2009. My company held on about a little over a year after the 2008 recession. And then it had to close its doors. And it sucked because I had literally just quit one really good job to start at this new place. And it would have been a nice step up had it lasted, had the company not then went under. Mm-hmm. So I found myself, midway through 2009, my wife had just had a baby. We just had a baby earlier in the year. And I was out of a job, and my wife's like, look, she does pretty good. She's in the medical field. She's like, why don't you stay home with the baby? I was like, okay. I didn't know how long it would last. So I did. Stayed home with the baby and with my daughter. And, a few months later, I'm climbing up the walls, man. I've been working since I was 15 years old, and I didn't know what to do. And I started watching lots of YouTube videos. And I remember at one point, I didn't even realize YouTube could be informative. Right? Like I thought it was just all kicked in the nuts and cat videos, right?
Yes.
Chocolate rain and shit like that. I mean, that's what I thought YouTube was back in late 2009. And then I remember I was was it? I was buying a gun. I can't remember which gun it was. And I was doing some research and I was going to look some stuff up on it. And YouTube videos kept popping up. And I was like, oh, okay, let me check this out. And so I was seeing people who, the gun community was very, very small on YouTube at that time. I think the biggest channel might have had 40, 50,000 subscribers.
Oh yeah, I remember those days.
Yeah, and those were big channels, and I started seeing reviews. People were just talking about their guns and reviewing them and say, "Hey, I shot it, and this is what it's like." And I was like, "Oh, okay." It's just like every other thing, right? And every other type of review. Now we kind of take it for granted, but there was a time when finding actual, genuine, informative information on YouTube was kind of strange.
Oh yeah, on the internet, period.
On the internet, period. Yeah, exactly. Especially in video format where I can see it and hear it and, leave comments and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
And so I thought it was cool. So I did that for, it's like November or December and throughout holidays, I'm watching YouTube videos and stuff. And January 2010 comes around. I'm like, man, I think, because I got a camera for Christmas. I got a little crappy 720p. I don't remember what it was, a JVC camera for Christmas.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'll make some YouTube videos and see what happens. And so I did. I just started making some YouTube videos. I think I posted my first YouTube video, which I only think because there's a couple of early ones that aren't up anymore because I had music on in front of them, and they got like hit dinged for copyright.
Yeah,
I did these little cheap little music intros like AC/DC or whatever. I don't remember what it was, and they got hit, so I had to take them down. But I think I did my first video in February 2010. And it was, just I'd go back and forth. My channel always started out as just a me channel. I get crap a lot when I do too many political videos. We go, oh, talk about guns again, or whatever. And I'm like, look, I was never just a gun channel. I mean, a lot of the content revolves around guns and firearms and the Second Amendment. But my channel was always, I was destined to talk about politics and just random stuff, whatever. I do videos about, I don't know, some weird thing that happened on the internet. Like, I did a video and posted up today about some people trying to sue the state of Illinois for more gun control because they're saying not enough gun control is racist and stuff like that. So, just weird stuff. Yes. And so that, that's kind of where it started. And I just started posting up videos and commenting on other people's videos, and I started making friends, and, it just kind of grew up from there and just, I was like, at first I was like, man, I remember coming to my wife one time and when I got like 400 or 500 views on a video, and I went, can you believe like 500 people watch my video? And she was impressed. She was like, wow. and then I think one thing that I've enjoyed a lot and that I fell into early on, it was within that first year, was doing live shows. And at the time, Google didn't have Google Hangouts. They didn't have the live streaming and all that stuff they have today. Early on, this would have been late 2010, maybe early 2011. There was this thing called Blog TV. And so I'm posting videos throughout the week. And what I did is I started doing a show once every Wednesday on Blog TV. Now, back then, it was just you and everybody else was in the audience chatting. They could just type. You couldn't have multiple people on at the same time. If you tried, there was literally like a 20, 30-second lag between when you said something and they could hear you. So it was impossible to have a conversation if you had a co-host on. And you could only have one other person. So I did that for, oh man, I can't remember. I guess, I did it up until the Google Hangouts became a thing. Google live streaming became a thing, which was probably a year and a half later. And they decided they were going to do that. And it was kind of choppy at first. So at first I was doing both at the same time. I'd do because back then I would do 4 hours every Wednesday night, which I don't do that anymore. But so I'd start at 7 o'clock and go till 11 o'clock. Again, remember, I didn't have a job, so I was staying home taking care of my kids. And so I could stay up that late. It wasn't a big deal. So, from 7 to 11 every night, I'd do 2 hours on Blog TV. Then I'd hop over and do 2 hours on YouTube. And then once it became obviis that the YouTube live streaming was going to be a good, stable platform, I just stopped doing Blog TV altogether. And I think that company somebody bought them out, changed it up, whatever. But the live streams really were a thing that I found I really, really enjoyed. Now, at that point, I had already, I think after the first year, I was probably up to 4,000 or 5,000 subscribers, which was big for back then. Hickok hadn't shot the pumpkin yet and gone viral.
Yes.
He did that, I think, in 2011. So he hadn't gone viral yet, which shot him up, made him huge. I mean, he was big in the gun community already, but he had less than 100,000 subscribers.
I remember those days. I really do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then he shot a pumpkin and it went viral, and that exploded. And then FPS Russia got big. So, I mean, there was, of course he got big mostly because of a bunch of kids playing Call of Duty, wanted to see blowing stuff up, but he was never really considered a quote unquote gun channel. He wasn't doing informative videos per se, but he was entertaining. So, but yeah, I just kind of hung on, I never felt my content was extraordinary or anything. It's really just me talking about the stuff I care about. The live chats are where I have my most fun. I have more fun doing those.
Yes, like I've noticed that. Yeah.
Yeah. I love doing that because this has become, these people that I talk to, these are my friends, This is who I hang out with, for, 2 hours on Monday, 2 hours on Wednesday, 2 hours on Friday, an hour or two on Sunday. That's the time you would spend hanging out with your friends. And that's what I'm doing. I'm not doing it face to face,
Yes.
We hang out, we drink beer, we talk about whatever we want to talk about. And so that's kind of what I enjoy the most. There's a lot of people out now on YouTube that all they do is the live streaming stuff. They don't even make videos. And honestly, had that been a thing when I started, that's probably what I would have ended up doing. Now, had I not been doing videos, my channel would have never gotten that big,
Yes.
Not that it's huge now.
You're pretty big now, right?
I have close to 100,000 subscribers. I mean,
that's pretty damn impressive, actually.
So, well, I mean, I don't know. We'll see. But
considering the content that you have, I mean, your channel mostly consists of discussions. I think that kind of speaks volumes as to how thirsty people are for that kind of content.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm happy with where I'm at. I like it. I mean, it'd always be, it'd be great to be bigger. But at the same time, I'm not. And this has been something that I've had many people come up to me and ask me about. I've had companies come to me and offer me free stuff, and I've always said no. And I've had networks and promoters come to me and say, "Hey, we think we can do more with your channel. Let's talk about this." And I'm like, "No, I'm good. I just want my channel to be me."
Yeah.
And so I have intentionally passed up opportunities where I know I could have gotten boosts in subscribers and views and things like that. Because it's just, maybe part of it's just being lazy. I just want the channel to be me. I don't want it to feel like a production.
I feel you on that. Yeah. I get you.
I don't want to, I just want to be, I want this to be enjoyable. I don't want it to feel like a job. You know what I mean? And to an extent, it kind of is. It helps to offset my income. I mean, I have patrons, back before the adpocalypse, I did get, paid money on Google for AdSense and stuff. And it goes to help pay my bills because I spend a decent amount of time doing this stuff. And so I've always kind of put that towards, maybe it pays an electric bill or whatever, so it does, there is some aspect of it that kind of feels like a job, especially with the patrons, because which I can't tell you how awesome that is. That people, I got, people give me $1 or $2 a month or something like that, just because they enjoy my content. Which, and I've said this many times, that means so much more to me than anything Google ever did.
I agree.
People want to give me $1 just for spouting off my bullshit. I mean, and that's awesome. And so when I've got patrons, I want to provide them with content. I want to, and a lot of them. I think most of the ones that watch the live chats are also the same ones that actually are my patrons. And so I feel, I love doing it, and I also feel a responsibility to make sure that I'm there every Monday and Wednesday and Friday nights for the ones that like to watch us when we play video games. And then on Sundays to talk to the audience and that kind of stuff.
It seems like you've actually kind of created a little community. That's what it feels like.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, a lot of it's, I'll be honest, a lot of it is the community has grown, and I don't want to take responsibility. I mean, obviously, every channel, I think, to an extent, is kind of its own little community, and as you grow and get your fans and that kind of thing, you can make a little, like a little NeverEnuffAmmo community. But also part of that is gunchannels.com, which is kind of the brainchild of a good friend of mine on YouTube, which is Gun Websites. And he's been doing it longer than I have. And he's
Mm-hmm.
he's been around for a long time. And he started that, what has it been, 6 years now? I think. I've been 6 years ago, he started gunchannels.com. And it's kind of like it's kind of like just a little online community. There's video sharing, there's pictures, there's, it's like Facebook for guns kind of.
Right.
A lot of the live chats and that kind of stuff is built up around that. Now that being said, I mean, we were the early adopters. It was, me and G-Webs and Yankee Marshall were some of the channels that pushed gun channels to be what it is. But it's, there's thousands of people there over on that site now that are all, a lot of them producing content, a lot of them doing their own shows. Man, a lot of the people that I have on my shows also do their own shows, other nights of the week at other times and stuff like that.
That is actually really encouraging to hear. Just to know that many people are into guns or into the Second Amendment and trying to keep it alive.
Oh yeah. Well, there's millions of us. I mean, estimates are roughly a third of people in the country own a gun.
That is higher than that.
Yeah, and so I mean, and some of them are probably just the lady that has a little snub nose that she keeps just for protection, and maybe she doesn't care about the Second Amendment. That's fine, But there's a lot of us. There's a lot of us out there that at least understand the importance, at least some aspects of the importance of owning a gun. Maybe you only understand the hunting aspect of it. Maybe you only understand the self-defense aspect of it, or maybe you understand those two things and the fact that it's important to preserve liberty in our country. But there's a lot of us out there, and I think that's one of those things. And I've tried to have conversations with people, when it comes to anti-gunners as well. And that's a group right there. They just slip through my fingers every time. Every time I find an anti-gunner who says they'll come on one of the shows so we can sit down and have a conversation, they always back out at the last minute. I've never successfully been able to. I can get communists, I can get Antifa, I can get socialists. I got flat earthers on there twice.
I saw, yes.
I can't get an anti-gunner to come on for anything. They back out every time.
We're going to talk about them a little bit later. Trust me, we're going to get up in their ass a little bit. But moving forward a little bit, I think this is perhaps the most important question here tonight. I know you have a thing for Taurus guns. Why do you like them?
Honestly, it wasn't anything intentional. I bought my first Taurus mid-2000s. It was, back then they were called the Millennium Series PT-111.
Yes.
Now I think they're called the G2C. And they've gone through a few revisions here and there. But I bought one, and it was an exceptionally good gun. It lasted a long time, and it worked really well. And then I bought another one. I think the next one was a revolver, and it was a good gun and worked really, really well. And then about 11 years ago, I think, I bought my Taurus PT-92, which is just a Beretta clone. That's all it is.
Yeah, how are those actually? I've been looking at one of those.
It is without a doubt the best handgun that Taurus makes.
Compared to the Beretta?
It's perfect. I prefer it to the Beretta in every aspect except finish. Beretta has a better, more durable finish.
Okay.
Taurus kind of cheaps out a little bit, and not cheaps, but they don't have as good and as long lasting of a finish. It's a little bit more of a matte finish, so you can see little scrapes and scratches a little better than you can on the I think what does Beretta call it, the Burriton, whatever they're
Burniton, whatever it is, yeah,
something like that. It's probably similar to the Tennifer that Glock uses,
right.
What does Smith & Wesson call theirs, the melanite coating or whatever. It's a similar type finish that Beretta uses, and it's a very good finish, a good durable finish. Taurus's is not as good as or durable, so there's that. But I've just owned a lot of them, and they have always worked for me, so it's just very natural. I didn't start out being the quote unquote spokesman for Taurus, as so many people like to call me. I wish I was. I'd love to get paid.
Hey, let's hook you up, man.
I actually genuinely like their product a lot and highly recommend it. But I like it because they're budget friendly, affordable guns that work. And what more can you ask for? You can go pick up a G2C. You can go pick up one for $230. You can go pick up a little Taurus TCP pocket pistol, $380, right, for self defense. Just last resort self defense. Somebody gets on you, you got 6 rounds of $380 that you can take care of. I own one. I love it. I carry it a lot, and you can pick it up for like $189. I mean, to be able to defend yourself, not everybody can spend $500 on a Glock.
That's right,
or $550 now. And Taurus is one of those companies that they are not cheap Saturday night special level quality. They are good quality. I would put them up against Ruger and a lot of other companies out there, depending on the gun. Some guns I like better. Yeah, some guns I like better than others. Some of their guns aren't as good as others of their guns. But I put my PT-92 up against any Beretta, hands down.
Wow, I don't think I've ever heard those words ever come out of someone's mouth.
Yeah, I've owned both. I've owned a couple of Berettas. In fact, I want to get another one. I want to get the Beretta, what is it? The M9A3, the new one.
Yeah, that's a badass gun right there.
I want to get one of those bad, but
yeah.
But yeah, they make a good gun, and they make a good gun affordably. So if you only have $250 to spend, and you know everybody has the right and should be able to find something to defend themselves with. I think everybody should own a gun. Honestly, I think the world would be a safer place if everybody owned a gun. You know, if everybody had a firearm, again, it's the great equalizer. You know, if everybody has a gun, then less people are likely to start screwing with other people. You know, if everybody knows that everybody else is armed, you know, what's the saying? An armed society is a polite society. Well, it is.
Yeah, it is.
Know? And it's you know, maybe that's one of those unfortunate things that happens in life because of human nature, and not all of us are going to be kind to each other. But still, it's a fact.
It's right.
Bad people are going to try and do
things. It's one of those unintuitive things that just happen to be true.
Yeah. And so it sucks that everybody has to be armed for people to get along, but that's the way the world works. That's human nature. And so let's just get everybody armed so everybody's a lot more polite. That's my philosophy. But
all right. So speaking of being armed, what is your current carry gun?
Right now, my go-to is my little Ruger LCR, my little
nice.
Lightweight revolvers.
38 special, 357.
38 special plus P. Yeah, I love that thing. And I have throughout life, in general, been a capacity whore, as I like to call myself. So I'm all about more capacity. But I have absolutely fallen in love with this little gun. I've owned it for about 3 years now. And it took the top spot over my Glock 26. I used to carry my Glock 26 everywhere. I mean, I've got the +2 extensions on it. That thing's been complete. I've done a lot of custom work to it, trigger job, undercut the trigger guard. I've done a lot to it, upgraded sights, all this kind of stuff. I had set it up as just like the perfect carry gun. And I got that Ruger LCR, and it took about a year. But over the course of that first year, by the end of that year, the LCR had become the one I carried the most.
I have owned LCRs, and that trigger, as far as revolvers go, is fantastic.
It's amazing.
Is yours double action only? You got the LCR X with the exposed hammer?
I don't have the X. Because to me, for one thing, I pocket carry it. And I don't want a hammer to have to worry about getting snagged on anything. Right, although that one doesn't have that bad of a hammer, but still there's something there. But yeah, I just have the standard LCR 38 special. It'll handle plus P loads, and I love it, man. I've shot a lot of revolvers in my time, and that's a good double action trigger pull. To me, that is without a doubt the best concealed carry revolver on the market today, and one of the best, probably in the top 5 concealed carry guns on the market today.
You'll get no argument from me. I agree with your assessment completely. It's a fantastic gun. So what kind of ammo you put through that thing when you carry it?
I've got some Hornady that I have, some Hornady plus P that I've got. I'll go through all kinds of stuff. I like, there's Winchester loads. Sometimes I'll carry I've carried wad cutters in that thing before, which, you know, crap for penetration, but it sure will open up a hole on somebody if you actually had to hit them with something. I am not picky about my ammo. You know, I usually will, you know, let's say for this gun, you know, I've got some semi-jacketed hollow points. I understand, you know, I'm not an ammo snob in that it's got to be the best, you know what I mean? I don't mind going and buying a standard box of, like, let's say what I keep in my nightstand gun, which is my Smith & Wesson M&P. It's in 40, and I keep just some standard Remington hollow points in there.
Nothing wrong with that.
Just some, you know, green yellow box, you know, standard hollow points that I picked up from a buddy of mine, and you know, they're it's not exception, you know, it's not ridiculously expensive ammo. It's more expensive than ball ammo or Winchester white box or anything like that. So I'm not an ammo snob. I you know, I understand that a bullet, by and large, is a bullet. I know a lot of people will disagree with me. Well, you got to get this, and what about the PDX Winchester PDX Defenders and all? And I have that ammo too. You know, I've got some PDX Winchester. I've got some expensive ammo, and I carry expensive ammo in some of my guns. It depends on what gun we're talking about. And I also just understand and appreciate that just a good, you know, Remington hollow point is going to do the job just fine in a defensive situation. And I don't need it to. I don't need it to be, what's the RIP ammo that?
Oh, that stuff is trash, man. It's trash.
It's like, you know, it's like $5 a round or whatever the hell it is. You know, just crap like that. I'm like, man, just, you know, we did pretty damn good for a long time with just regular ammo. And then when hollow points came along, that was a nice upgrade. So
right.
yeah, I'm and part of that may just be because I'm cheap. You're not gonna see me spend $50 for a box of self-defense ammo.
Yeah,
No.
that's ridiculous. So how do you feel about the solid like copper projectiles? Like what is it, the Extreme Defenders and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. I mean, I am of the mind that, and I know some of this is comes from a point of lead's bad and all this kind of stuff, right? There's a movement of that, and so people are coming up with, they've got the polymer projectiles now. They've got the solid copper rounds. Yeah, a lot of stuff. And I actually don't have a problem with any of that stuff at all. I'm all for, if you can make a bullet better and make it without lead, go for it, as long as it doesn't cost me a lot more money. So I encourage the technology to move forward to do whatever we're going to do. Because, let's be honest, lead is not exactly the most environmentally friendly thing around. There's a reason why they had to take it out of paint. So, it's not, in the amounts that we use, it's not like we sit here and we rub lead all over ourselves while we're, doing stuff. And there's plenty of people who cast their own bullets who don't get cancer every day. But still, lead is more or less a toxic substance. So, hey, if the market moves along and decides that, another type of bullet is going to do the job and work, and the market decides that's the way we're going to go, I'm all for it, man.
So speaking of bullets and calibers and stuff like that, what is your preferred caliber? What is your favorite handgun caliber?
Okay, my favorite handgun caliber is 45. Probably because
same page.
Yeah, probably because my first handgun was 1911.
Right.
And it's just a good all-American caliber. That being said, I have more 9mm than anything else because 9mm is extremely effective and extremely cheap. It's the #1 caliber in the world for handguns. It is the most used, most produced handgun caliber in the world. It's the one I usually recommend to people getting into firearms. Just, get a 9mm and you're going to be happy with it probably for the rest of your life. It's common enough and cheap enough and small enough that it works for just about anybody who picks up a 9mm handgun. They can handle it. And at the same time, it's more than enough to put down whatever threat might be coming at you if you get a shot off at them. But like I said, 45 is my favorite. But I'm more likely to carry a 9 or whatever, just because I own more of those, Glock 26 or whatever. Yeah, if you got to say favorite, I got to say 45. I love 45. 45.
So what about rifles? If you could pick one rifle caliber for the rest of your life, take in emergency situations to hunt with, do all caliber, what would that be?
7.62x39. And it would probably be an SKS.
Man, you and I think a lot alike. That's my answer as well.
Look, I love AKs, but if I got to have one rifle that's got to do for hunting and everything else, it got to be for defense and for putting food on the table, I'm going an SKS and 7.62x39. I love those. That's probably my favorite all-around rifle, period, is just a good SKS. Doesn't even have to be modified. I don't care about duckbill magazines. 10 rounds, semi-auto. Yep. It is reliable. It is durable. Those things are tough as nails. They work. They're more than accurate enough for hunting. They're great for defense. As long as you don't get those long-ass Yugo ones with the grenade launcher and all that other crap on it.
I own that one. Excellent.
Oh, you do?
Excellent weapon.
I love them. To me, it's just too much. I like the cheap Chinese ones because I'm cheap and they're a little bit smaller and a little bit lighter. The Chinese ones, although Chinese ones are in really, really rough shape. You got to really put some work into them to make them look good. Now, I've owned Yugos before. I love Yugos, but I don't like that grenade launcher on the front, and it adds about an extra 2 inches to the barrel length over like just a standard carbine.
Yeah.
And so I like the smaller, more compact, like cheap Chinese ones. But I usually have to do a lot of work to get those Chinese ones in working condition because they are rough. They didn't take this thing. When these things get shipped in over here, they are broken stocks and rust everywhere, and you got to check the barrel for pitting and all kinds of other stuff. So the Yugo ones are definitely in better condition. But yeah, man, I'm SKS all the way. That's
But the stripper clip doesn't bother you?
No, not at all. Not at all. Yeah, like I said, I don't mind. I've sporterized and modernized more than a few SKSs in my time because I've owned several of them. Although right now I don't own one. I haven't owned one for about 2 years, and I keep telling myself I need to go pick up another one because it's been a while because prices are not going down. I know they're getting more and more expensive, but yeah, I mean, it's 7.62 by 39 is a fantastic caliber. It's a step above 30-30. You get better ballistics with a 7.62 by 39 than you do a 30-30. Similar, there's some similarities between the two. So you basically take a good hunting caliber like 30-30, and you give it some ballistic advantages because you're not dealing with a flat nose cartridge.
Right.
And you've got a good round for hunting, pretty much anything you would need to hunt to survive, and you got a fantastic round for defense as well. So yeah.
All right, so let's move on here to what do you think of the NRA?
Oh, I am not a fan of the NRA. I describe the NRA as a gun union that uses fear to keep membership up.
Absolutely.
They were in place and on board for the 68 Gun Control Act, for the ban, the Reagan's ban in the 80s. They were on board for the assault weapons ban in 94. They helped write the Nix bill.
Yep. For the Hughes Amendment.
Yeah, absolutely. We're talking about an organization that goes around saying, "Oh, without us, we're going to lose our gun rights. Pay us money every month, $25 a year, whatever, please." And they go around scaring people to get membership up, not bothering to tell everybody that they're the ones behind closed doors that are helping to do the things that they then turn around and use to scare their members with.
100% truth.
I think they are a two-faced organization. I'm a member of the GOA, the Gun Owners of America. I think it's a much more they're obviously other ones. Second Amendment Foundation is a really good organization as well.
Yep.
But Gun Owners of America, which I can't currently say right now, is probably my favorite. The guy that runs it, Larry Pratt.
Oh yeah, he's great.
He's a great guy, and they actually genuinely do care about the Second Amendment. They genuinely do. They're not there trying to work deals behind closed doors with politicians, and then going to their members and going, "Look what they're going to do," just to keep membership up. They're out there, they're open, they're in front of everybody. They're the ones that actually, when the NRA didn't go to Washington, when Washington was passing all those laws a few years ago, the NRA, when they didn't go there because they couldn't be bothered. They're a nationwide organization. They don't worry about state level things, even though right now the state level, that's where we're losing gun rights.
Yes.
But GOA was there. Second Amendment Foundation was there with the people trying to fight some of this stuff.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the NRA, and I was a member of the NRA for many, many years. I let that membership expire a while back, and I'm not a fan. Now I don't, obviously the whole they're killing children in the streets with AR-15s. That whole left wing crap is
it's garbage. It's all nonsense.
The NRA has never killed a single person. Okay, the NRA doesn't kill people. The NRA supposedly fights for what its members want. The NRA is gun owners in the United States. That's who the NRA is. Okay, they're not.
If anything, the NRA has killed more mass shooters than anything because of that guy at that church shooting in Texas taking out the shooter.
Yeah. So I mean, it's the left. The way they react to the NRA is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean,
it's
over the top.
It's very similar to the way they react, or to the way they react to Trump. It's insane. They like to assign blame to whoever they're going against at any given time. And don't get me wrong, I'm not exactly a Trump fan, but
yes.
They sure assign a whole lot of stuff to him that just isn't true. The same way they do with the NRA. They just.
I'm not a Trump fan. I can say that with authority. I'm not a Trump fan, but I do believe Trump derangement syndrome is real.
Oh, absolutely, it's real. Yeah. It's very, very real. I mean, I remember, and I've had conversations with Jedi, Open Liberty podcast, and he's gay, and I remember having conversations with him just I think on the last podcast we did, and he very much believed all the hype when Trump got elected, going on 2 years ago. He thought Trump was going to come in and hated gay people and was going to do away with gay marriage and all this other stuff, because that's what the left was saying. I mean, now, if you actually listen to him, he's the most pro-gay-friendly president we ever had going into office. Obama was still against gay marriage when he took office.
That's right.
Trump was giving speeches on the campaign trail in front of the rainbow flag and saying anybody can use any bathroom in any of his hotels.
He was holding up the flag.
Yeah. I mean,
I remember that.
Yet they still said, oh, he's anti-gay and anti-trans and he wants to hang gay people and all this other ridiculous stuff they're saying. So the left just, whether it's Trump, whether it's the NRA, they pull it out of their ass. I don't know where they get half the stuff they get. Anybody with any, Google skills can look some stuff up and go, oh, yeah, that's not true. But, yeah, the derangement is real. Again, whether it's Trump, whether it's the NRA, whether, guns, evil AR-15. Yeah, okay. Yeah. All right, handguns kill.
We saw similar behavior when Obama was president, but nothing to this extent. This is out of control.
Nothing like this, yeah. And I tried to honestly take a look back too during those Obama years where we were all pretty worked up on the right, or at least the right was worked up, and then there's people like me who were constitutional who were worked up about the Second Amendment.
Yes,
that from that libertarian aspect.
And I was among them.
Yeah,
I voted for him for the first time. I didn't vote for him the second time, but
yeah. And like the healthcare thing, that was a big one. It's like, okay, you're going to come and force me to buy something that I either don't want to buy or can't afford to buy, and then find me. So from a constitutional perspective, there was many things that we were very upset about. But I tried to rationally go back and look at some of the videos that I did during that time and try and remember some of the things that were going on in the world, some of the stories that were happening with the Tea Party and everything. And the right never acted like this. As much as they hated Obama, as much as they hated the Democrats, as much as they hated those left-wing policies, as much as they hated the health care, all that stuff, they never acted like this. They never did.
Yes. They did some ridiculous stuff like, he didn't wear a flag lapel. He hates America. But
they would say ridiculous things. They would accuse him of ridiculous things.
Yes.
Absolutely. But they didn't act out like this at all.
Yeah. It's completely different.
And I'm just, it blows me away. The vitriol, just the seething hate. And why? Because a politician told you to be that mad? Because somebody on MSNBC said something ridiculous and you just take it to heart and decide you're going to go put on all black and run around in a mask? I don't understand.
Again, we do have to understand that these are people way, way to the left. They're on the extreme side of things. There's more people like me than that,
And I know there is, and that's why I like having conversations like this, because even again, we disagree on a few things. That's fine. That's life. That's human beings.
That's
We're going to disagree on some stuff, but we agree on far more. And if we'd stop worrying about those extremes on the right and the left, and stop trying, and part of it I think is because people have this need to feel a part of a group.
Yes.
And politics preys on that. The Republicans do it. The Democrats do it. They prey on it. Again, like we were talking about earlier, you want to be part of our group, you got to check all these boxes. And you got to just irrationally go along with whatever we tell you. Don't do your own research. If we tell you Trump's going to try and hang gay people, you better believe it. Right? If we tell you that the NRA is killing children in the streets with AR-15s, you better just believe it. And the right does the same thing. They say, if we let gay, they don't do this anymore because they've learned their lesson. But when they were on the gay marriage bandwagon, if we let gay people get married, it'll hurt your marriage, which is just dude, it's not going to hurt your. If that hurts your marriage, you had a shitty marriage.
That's right. That's right. I remember that shit, man. That was ridiculous.
But both sides do it. Again, being a constitutional libertarian with conservative leanings, that's a mouthful. But being that, I am more personally offended by the stuff the left does than the right does, even though I can see the ridiculousness in the right.
Well, I'm coming at it from the opposite end, and I'm more offended by the stuff the left is doing right now because it's kind of like staring into the abyss and seeing some distorted kind of otherworld version of yourself staring back at you, and it's just disturbing because you can see bits of yourself in them, but they're behaving in a way that is so bizarre that I just can't approve of it, and it's embarrassing.
No, it is, and I'm used to saying it because I've been saying it for years, and so I think it does mean more when you say it as opposed to me because I'm already. As much as I sit here, I'm a conservative, constitutional libertarian. I still lean more right, obviously.
Right.
But that's so it probably means a little less when I say the left is looking ridiculous because I'm already going to be more predisposed to be against a lot of the stuff they're going to say. But
That
there
is
are
the
a lot of
entire
people.
purpose of this podcast that I'm doing, is to
Yeah.
get people on the left to kind of just chill out, open up your mind, and kind of accept the idea that people on the opposite aisle can be right about some things, and you can be wrong about some things, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I can't. There's been many things that I've changed my mind on just in the last 10 years.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
things that I'm just no. For whatever reason, little stuff here and there. And to me, it doesn't. I mean, if you know you're right, right? I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
But if if you do get proven wrong on something, I don't. It's like people have bought into their ideologies and are using that as if that's an ingrained part of who they are. And if you prove to them that something they believe in is wrong, then that's an insult to their very being. And I don't think it should.
This ties in perfectly with the last two questions I want to ask you.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
So the first part of this is, why do you think people are anti-gun? And the second part is, why are so many anti-gun people so ignorant of the matter? And why do they feel justified in speaking out so loudly against something they know nothing about?
Man, as far as why are so many people anti-gun, first, I think it's a vocal minority. There aren't a lot of people who are anti-gun. Now, the way that anti-gun things get passed by and large is people that don't know anything get convinced that they should vote for this person or vote for that measure or that proposal or whatever it may be, because it's for the good of the children, because the people told them so. I think there's a large majority in this country that is neither pro-gun or anti-gun. They are just, well, this is America. Some people have guns, some people don't. And you have an anti-gun agenda, which again is more about control and less about guns, that uses, whether it be a Sandy Hook or a Parkland or a Las Vegas shooting, or even some random, shooting in a state level that nobody's ever heard of, but can motivate, politics, right? Can motivate people to do things, and people take these things and they blow them up and they make them seem worse than they are. Although, I mean, it's hard to make something seem worse than it is. It's pretty bad, but yeah, they make it seem like. And I've heard so many people say this. I've literally heard Nancy Pelosi say, and she's caught on camera, and I don't remember when this was. This was sometime after Sandy Hook, sometime in 2013, 2014. And she gets up on stage and she says, well, look, we know that there are no laws we could have passed that would have stopped this from happening. Look, we know that, but we have to do something. Like, that statement is so it's an oxymoron. We know there is no law we could have passed that would have stopped this, but we need to do something. And it's that emotional play to do something. It doesn't matter if that something is the right thing. It doesn't matter if that something would actually even help. I mean, we go through the data, we go through the statistics, we go through places that have more gun control versus places that don't. We go to places that are gun-free zones versus places that aren't. And we look at the terrible things that happen, whether it's mass shootings or murders or whatever. And more gun control does not work. Look at Chicago. Dear God, nobody on the left wants to talk about Chicago. Highest gun control in the country. One of the highest gun crime and murder rates in the country. Gun control does not stop people from doing bad things. What stops people from doing bad things is when people can fight back. When you stop making people defenseless. But again, it's about control. It's not about guns. So you have these groups of people who get convinced that the reason they're voting for this or voting for that is because it's for the children. It's for safety. It's for this. It's for that. And they don't do research. Let's be honest. Most people in the United States, one of the downsides of being a very prosperous nation, the most prosperous nation in the history of the world, one of the downsides is that people get lazy. People get lazy. They don't have to pay attention. They don't want to pay attention. They don't want to get involved in politics, although that is changing and people are becoming very, very vitriolic and taking sides and that kind of thing. But so you get these people that I don't really think are anti-gun. You got the anti-gun, loud minority, but they use their voting blocks to push for these things. They're just people that don't know. They're people that never take the time to do the research. They're not reading FBI statistics for murder rates like I do. You know what I mean?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
They're not looking at causes of death from the CDC. They're not studying John Lott's papers on gun violence and gun control over the history of the last 50 years in this country. They're not looking at these things because they don't have to. The problem then comes is when those uninformed people then go out and vote for things that they don't understand.
Yes.
So yeah, why are so many people anti-gun? Well, there's the ones that want the control, and there's the ones that are very vocal and screaming and yelling, who are also very, very ignorant and don't understand. You got a small minority controlling the anti-gun crowd that know exactly what they're doing. You've got your Nancy Pelosi's that just want to take guns away from people because it's a part of the progressive agenda. Disarm the population. That's a part of the progressive agenda. They've been talking about that for over 100 years. The Progressive Party that became popular in this country back in the early 20th century openly talked about, through the likes of people like George Bernard Shaw and Teddy Roosevelt and Woodrow Wilson and many other people, talked about how we have to disarm the population. If you want a population that can benefit society, you have to disarm them first. And once you do that, you then start to take control. And then you have to start to make them productive members of society. And there's whole speeches you can listen to where, like George Bernard Shaw got up, who, by the way, was one of the heads of the Progressive Party. He wasn't just a playwright. He's also somebody that Goebbels and Hitler quoted many, many times as being part of the reason why they used the propaganda they did before they started eradicating Jews. George Bernard Shaw got up and said, every 7 years, a human being should have to come before a council and prove their value to society. And if they can prove their value to society, they get to continue to live. If not, we do away with them. That's the mindset of the Progressive Party where it started 100 years ago. Now, that's not to say they still think the same way they do today.
I don't know, man. They still might.
They still might. That's the other side of it, right? They still feel they need to disarm the populace to regain proper control over society. That is still a tenet in progressive politics. So you have these people like your Nancy Pelosi's, like your Obamas, like a lot of these people up there pushing your Chuck Schumers, your Michael Bloombergs, George Soros, who push for these anti-gun agendas, and they know what they're doing. And then there's the people below them that are hardcore anti-gunners that are seething. They're just ignorant. They don't know. They listen to the people tell them guns are bad and why they need to get rid of guns, and they never do any research on the topic, which is why I would love to have conversations with an anti-gunner sometime, but they always seem to chicken out before they come on the show.
Yes, they do.
That's the long-winded answer to why I think there's so many anti-gunners.
I think you answered it perfectly. You know what? That's it for all the questions tonight. I mean, is there anything you want to add? Anything you want to say?
Thanks for having me on. I like this. I don't do a whole lot of one-on-one stuff. I do every so often, on one of my shows, but honestly, it's maybe like once a year. I'll have some hop on and we do a one-on-one. But I like it. It's a cool format. I like it a lot.
I mean, thank you for coming on. You had me on your show twice, and I hope to be there in the future.
Yeah. Well, we're going to be doing one, next Thursday. Not this Thursday, but next Thursday.
Next Thursday? Okay, I'll make a point to be there.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
All right, man. It's been great.
Yeah. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
And now, a word from our sponsors. This is your host, Brad. Unfortunately, we don't have any advertisers at the moment. Thankfully, Patreon has us covered. As most people are aware, social media entities across the internet are clamping down on the ability for gun-related content producers to fund their projects. Your support on Patreon gives those of us here at the Second Amendment Liberal Podcast the ability to keep the lights on. As this project grows, expect interviews with interesting and notable people in the gun world, reviews of cool gun-related products, and travel to locations around the country to get the scoop on stories that otherwise would be out of reach. I have big things planned for the future of this podcast, folks. For $3 a month, you can pledge your support on Patreon. As things develop and take off around here, there will be all sorts of tiers and perks. If you find yourself unable to support us monetarily, hey, that's cool. I understand. I know money is tight for many people right now, and I just appreciate you listening. Go to patreon.com/2A Liberal Podcast. The number 2, the letter A, Liberal Podcast, and become a patron today. Thank you very much for listening. That's it for episode 2, part 1 of Ignorance and Ego. Thank you for joining me. Next time, I'm going to have another YouTuber on, and he is on the more infamous side of things. I think you're going to enjoy it very much. Until then, see you next time. Thank you for joining me.